The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
So good evening, folks. Just having a little look, and we're just getting a few people on board. I'm just having a little look at a nice number that is slowly totting up. So we'll start our webinar in around about a minute's time or so, just as a few more people join in. And while that happens, I will introduce myself. So welcome to today's webinar. This is the Foundations for Elite Health webinar, and this is the fourth day of the current batch of webinars that we've been putting on your behalf. Hopefully you've managed to tune into one or two of those across the last 4 days. We've had some really great webinars done where we've been looking at things like how to improve your sleep, and we've been looking at solutions for IBS and acid reflux. And yesterday we had an amazing talk on a tricky subject that's not easy to discuss, but that was looking into sexual dysfunctions, and Simon did an incredible job of delivering that talk. So how are we doing? So we're up to a reasonably decent number. While that continues to go up, I'll introduce myself. So as you can see, my name is Rob Minton, and I'm delivering this webinar for you. And this webinar is all about weight loss and hopefully how you can lose weight without necessarily dieting, which is an interesting subject title. I'll tell you a little bit about me. So I have been in the fitness industry for around about 18 years. I have helped people in regards to a number of different issues, weight loss being one of them. But I also have a bit of a passion, which is running. Please don't come out of this webinar straight away if you're a runner hater. But running is kind of my passion. It's something that I enjoy, and I have found that I run better if I look after my weight loss. Well, it makes sense. The less pounds you are trying to hike up a hill, the faster you will run, and the more you'll enjoy it. Okay, so we'll kind of get going with the webinar, and hopefully you'll get a lot out of both today's webinar and any future webinars. We've got more next week, which I'll go into at a later date. Basically, they're put on to hopefully inspire you to hopefully take control of your own health and head towards what we call elite health, which is essentially the pinnacle of health that you can achieve. So I'm going to move on to my first slide, and that's good, the technology works. So first off, we have some good news, bad news, good cop, bad cop. You may or may not have seen this article that was on the BBC website this week. So the good news, as you can see, is that our life expectancy is steadily on the increase. Women are ahead of the game, as per normal. They usually are, even though us men don't like to admit it. As you can see, from 1981, steadily from sort of low 70s, mid 70s, we're heading towards 80 and plus. Well, that's really good news, isn't it? Or is it? If you look at the table below, the not so good news is that obesity is on the rise. Slight more bit of good news on that table is that smoking is actually on the decrease. It's not quite as socially acceptable these days, is it? And possibly the government's no smoking policy in certain places is having an effect. But why would our life expectancy increase, yet our obesity levels are also increasing? What that suggests to me, and what this article was all about, was that while we are living longer, actually those later years in our life, we're actually suffering from more issues. We're suffering from more diseases and more problems. So, for example, the stat was the last 16 years of our lives, potentially, we will be suffering from things like diabetes, heart disease, and cancers, all of which are certainly on the increase. So I, for one, yeah, I like the idea of living a little bit longer than the average, but I certainly don't want to live those final years having to traipse backwards and forwards to the hospital and be ill or on medication, and I'm sure you don't either. And obesity has a massive link, as we know, with things like diabetes, has a massive link with certainly with heart disease, and cancer rates do decrease if we look after our body weight and look after our bodies generally. So moving on to my next slide. As I've already mentioned, obesity is on the increase despite our life expectancy rising, which means our later years we are more likely to spend suffering from illness and disease. So why is that? Well, the UK does have a problem. We are now third in Europe for having more obese people than any other country in Europe. And basically our Western diet and our convenience food diet doesn't really create good elite health. Even if we try to eat well, our food sources aren't great. They're rich in pesticides and they're poor in nutrition. And I'll give you some examples. So your average apple that you will purchase from your local supermarket, that apple was probably picked possibly up to a year ago. It's then been stored in some kind of cold storage, and they use chemicals to avoid that apple from going rotten or bad. And then when the moment's right, when the supermarket needs to stock its shelves to make sure that they don't run out of apples, those apples appear on the shelf and then we buy them. I kind of bypass that. I have an apple tree in my allotment, and I pick those. And at the moment, I'm having this nagging argument with the kids because they're moaning about them going a little bit bad, or there being a little blemish on them. But what I noticed with those apples is that as soon as I cut into them, they start to oxidize. That doesn't happen with your average apple from the supermarket. Basically because that apple from the supermarket has been sprayed, it's been stored, it's got a lot of chemicals on it, and it hasn't been looked after very well. What's the nutrition like? It's going to be pretty low. It's going to be pretty poor compared to my apple that I've literally picked off the tree that day. Another example is bread. Bread that I'm blaming the supermarkets, we buy from the supermarkets. They're designed to earn people money. They're designed to earn those companies money that make the bread. They're not necessarily designed for great health. So the yeast that gets put in bread that we buy from the supermarket, it's not it's not yeast as a baker, an independent baker would know it. An independent baker would have yeast that they probably ferment over a number of days, weeks, months, maybe up to even 12 months. And that is really good, healthy yeast that'll make that bread far better quality, far better nutrition, compared to your bread that you'll get off a supermarket shelf, which they tend to use instant yeast. It's not very good quality. We're then consuming that, we're putting that in our stomachs. It's not great for our digestion, it's not great for our stomachs, and we're not in a great place. The last one I mentioned is cheese. Cheese also has the same kind of problem. Again, they're trying to fast track. They're trying to cut corners. They're trying to make things easier and quicker for themselves to produce it to stock our shelves. So again, it's not great to consume. So if you can find independent guys, if you can find independent shops, okay, you might be paying a little bit more for it, but in terms of the quality that you're putting in your stomach, it'll be far greater. How does this relate to obesity? How does this relate to maybe the diets that you've been on? Maybe you've tried dieting. Maybe you've had diets where a friend has done well on it, so you try it, and you try it for a couple of weeks. But despite your friend doing really, really well, the weight isn't budging. Maybe you try a diet, but it doesn't work. You yo-yo back up to a certain weight. Most diets are poorly designed. At the end of the day, if Weight Watchers and Slimming World worked, they wouldn't have any customers. So trying to find a way forwards that's right for you is really, really important. As you can see from my table, one of the biggest issues for us as individuals is having a poor quality, if I can say those words, microbiome. I don't know if you've heard of the word microbiome. This is one of the words that's coming out of science as we speak, and the research done on your microbiome. And if you don't know what your microbiome is, this is your gut health. It's the quality of your digestive system and how well it's able to digest and absorb any foods that you eat. If your microbiome is of poor quality, then you're going to have a number of issues. They are linking your poor microbiome with a lot of different diseases, mental health, and it certainly has an effect on whether we digest foods properly and absorb them properly, and therefore it is very much linked with weight loss and whether we gain weight or we lower weight. As you can see, literally from the moment we are born, our microbiome is affected. So the type of birth we have, if you are born normally or if you have a cesarean section, straight away, we as babies are covered in thousands of microbes from our mother. And if we don't have a cesarean, or our mothers have a cesarean when we have us, then we miss out on having all those microbes, and we're not getting a great start in life in terms of having a good microbiome. The foods that we consume also affect our microbiome. So if you're having foods such as bread from a supermarket, as I've mentioned, that can negatively affect your gut, can negatively affect your microbiome. On top of that, drugs and medication. I put drugs, I mean the medicinal kind, hopefully, as opposed to the recreational kind, but I'm sure they have a harmful effect as well. So drugs and medication certainly have a big impact on your microbiome. As we've found, doctors are getting very reluctant to give out antibiotics now, which is a good thing because they're worried about the superbug. But on top of that, okay, everyone wants that antibiotic to wipe out whatever they're feeling, but at the same time as wiping out those bad bacteria that are inside us, they also wipe out our good bacteria. So if you're having a constant influx of antibiotics, then again, that negatively affects your microbiome. And the final one, and sometimes isn't easy to deal with because most of us have stress in our lives. When you jump in a car to drive to work or to take the kids to the school, you're going to experience a bit of road rage now and again, or maybe every single morning if it's me, and our stress levels skyrocket, and then straight away that makes your tummy churn. Our stomachs reflect how we're feeling, and any kind of stress will be impacted on our digestive area. So all those four things, amongst a few others as well, but those are the main ones, they all affect our microbiome. So trying to find a way forwards where you are looking after your microbiome and keeping it in tip-top condition and really, really healthy is very, very important. So why is our microbiome important to us from a weight loss perspective? So you can see my little cartoon there that's got two mice. So Washington University did a study into twins, not twin mice, but twin adults, two girls. One girl was overweight and she was obese, and one girl was nice and skinny and slim. And what scientists did was they put microbes from both twins into mice to see how they would react, to see what would happen. The mice had been raised in a sterile environment, so they hadn't actually developed any gut bacteria of their own. And this allowed essentially scientists to see how their bodies would react from having the microbes from the two twins, from the two sisters. So a set of mice were given microbes from the lean twin, a set were from the fatter twin. And what they found was that the lean twin and the mice that were having the microbes from the lean twin continue to stay lean. Both sets of mice were given exactly the same diet, exactly the same amounts, and the lean sets of mice stayed lean. As I'm sure you can predict, the mice that were given the microbes from the obese twin, they gained weight, even though they're being fed the same amount of food. So what the scientists concluded was that the microbes you have in your stomach, or that the mice have in their stomach, massively affects whether you gain weight or whether you lose weight. So maybe you're somebody who eats all the right things. You have fruit salad for breakfast, you have salad for lunch, you're having lettuce coming out of your ears because you're having kale, you're having all those lovely things that you've been told and you see in the news, you see in magazines. They're the right things that you should be taking to keep healthy and to stay slim, yet you're not losing weight. Well, it could be that your microbiome and the balance of microbes in your gut is not happening. So what is the solution? Some solutions are that you follow what I call a whole food diet, and you try and avoid anything that's highly processed. These are all the general rules anyway that you should follow when you're eating. And I don't like the term diet. A diet shouldn't be a thing that you do, but try and avoid anything that's highly processed. Try and avoid anything that's brown. Try and make sure that you are still eating those leafy green vegetables and some fruits as well. Try and make sure you're having good quality lean protein, whether it's from a meat source, a fish source, or if you're vegetarian, from an alternative source. And then obviously try and make sure that you do exercise too, because it is about burning calories as well as consuming the right amount of calories for you. However, if you are doing that right, that's fantastic, but that's not actually resetting your microbiome. So what does reset a microbiome is the following. We have here a 21-day microbiome purify plan. This is phenomenal. This is a 21-day plan that will do a number of things. It will detoxify your body. It will help cleanse your digestive tract, and essentially it'll balance out your microbiome. This is incredibly comprehensive. It is very, very easy to follow. You essentially take a number of different nutritional supplements across the 21 days, while at the same time managing and altering your intake of food and making sure that it is tip-top and as healthy as possible. This will allow you to have better sleep. If you tuned into John's webinar on Monday, which was all about sleep, you will know that by getting a good night's sleep, you're more likely to eat sensibly and manage your blood sugar levels the following day. It will also allow you to have better circulation. It will have a fantastic effect on your digestion. Anything that has been sluggish with your digestion, it will gently encourage that to be a little bit more active. But alternatively, if you find you go to the toilet a little bit too much and you have issues in that regard as well, essentially it slows down and regulates your digestive tract and allow you to function on a far better basis. I have a couple more notes on that as well, bear with me. It will also have a great effect on any inflammation you have in your bowel, because what you probably don't realize is some of what you have around the middle might not be body fat, but it might be inflammation, it might be bloating. You could possibly put it down to water retention, but it isn't that. It's inflammation, and by doing the 21-day plan, it'll ease that bloating, it'll ease the inflammation, and it'll calm everything down. The final thing it will do is it will hugely massively improve your blood sugar levels. It'll reduce your sugar cravings that you may have. It increases the amount of protein that you have in your body, and by increasing protein into your diet, You become less dependent on sugar as an entity, and you can manage your body better as a consequence. To show you how this has worked for a couple of people, I have on the line a woman who has been through this plan, and she's come out the other side, and I'd like her to share with you a bit of information of how that went. So I'd like to introduce Ginny to everybody. Hi, Ginny. Can you hear me?
Hi, Rob. Yes, thanks. Hi, everybody.
Thank you for joining me. So
No
I believe you've got a fantastic story linked with weight loss on your behalf, and is it linked with post baby weight? Is that right?
Yes, it is actually. For my sins, I had 4 babies over the years.
Wow, good work.
First 2, I know, 4 years apart, and then I remarried and I had another 2 babies, 2 girls. And before I had my kids, in my sort of early to mid 20s, I was super fit. I did a lot of sport. I was pretty lean, I would say. And gradually, with each child, I had gestational diabetes with my first son, and with each child I just really struggled to lose the weight. It just seemed like my metabolism became really sluggish, and I became quite depressed in a way, because obviously I was used to seeing a certain image. I had a certain image of myself, and then that changed quite drastically when I became a mum, and I lost a lot of my confidence especially in my appearance.
Which is very typical. And it's not just you're carrying more weight, but it's how you view yourself, and how your happiness is linked with how you view yourself as well.
Exactly. Oh, totally. So I wasn't feeling too great, and I had back problems, and obviously I was stressed and busy, trying to sort of, like mums do, juggle lots of different things. And when I first started taking some of Synergy's supplements, I did lose some weight. I lost about 1/2 stone, which I was really pleased with, but I knew that I was still overweight for me. And then I did the 21-day Purify program. And I didn't know what to expect, really, because I'd never done anything like that, sort of cleanse or detox or anything. And I always had I had an uncontrollable hunger. My husband used to joke that I ate like a prop forward. I mean, I seriously had a really healthy appetite. I thought, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this. But actually, I surprised myself, and I followed the instructions, and I ate the clean foods from the list. And I found that I wasn't actually hungry. In fact, if anything, I found I had problems. I missed out some of the snacks because I wasn't hungry. I didn't get hungrier until probably maybe about day 6 of the 7-day intense phase. I had a few days of feeling not so good. And then I took all my measurements and stuff before I did it. And then afterwards, after the 21-day period, I just couldn't believe the results I'd had. Weight-wise, I'd lost about 1 stone in weight. I'd lost 2 inches off my waist. Wow. Oh, I was over the moon. All my clothes were falling off me, and in fact, I lost 1 inch off the top of each thigh, so they didn't actually rub together when I walked. It was like, oh, that's a new sensation and I lost weight everywhere, actually, off my back, my arms, my face, and I just felt like me again. It felt like it gave me back my life, because I was wearing size 14 to 16 clothes. Beforehand, and now I'm wearing size 10 to 12. So obviously it made me feel good about myself, but also it had other things. I had more energy, massive amount of energy. My sleep improved, and also it had a transformational effect in that it actually changed my eating habits, because I'd got in the habit of eating good clean food, cutting out refined carbs, and I found that my appetite reduced. I wasn't hungry all the time, and the one vice that I did have, which was chocolate, so I could be a bit of a Bridget Jones after a meal and have a whole bar of Galaxy, that went. So now I can just take it or leave it. I don't crave it. I don't need it. And so it had a lot of knock-on effects, really positive ones that I didn't expect when I did it, but it was absolutely life-changing.
And so has that weight loss kept off? How long ago did you do the plan?
Yes, it has kept off. That was 2 years ago when I did the first one. I do it twice a year now just to keep my metabolism, running really smoothly. I'm much more active than I used to be. I think a lot of my problems probably with the weight loss had stemmed from the fact that I had taken a lot of antibiotics in my 20s. I had a few health issues, and as you were mentioning about antibiotics, I've been on antibiotics on and off for 2 years, and I think it destroyed my gut flora, and that's probably why it didn't help when I obviously had the babies with the weight loss. So, but this was amazing. I didn't have to go to the gym. I just did a sort of 20 to 30-minute walk each day, and I followed the plan, and that was it. And it was just amazing.
And it's also fantastic that you put something into you, because it sounds like with 4 children, you're doing so much for everybody else. Having the chance to put something back into you that actually does benefit everybody else, because they've got a mum that can chase after them and play and have the energy to do that. That's a fantastic thing.
Oh yes, thank you. Yeah, no, they do. I whip their butts into gear now and go out, let's do some stuff. So yeah.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story with me. I really appreciate that, and hopefully everyone's learned a little bit from hearing about your story.
Oh, my pleasure.
Wonderful. Okay, so that's the end in terms of giving a bit more information about a solution that can help with your weight loss and your microbiome plan. So thank you for listening to that. Before we leave you, however, I'd like to tell you a little bit more about what's coming up. So if, for example, you would like to find a little bit more about Synergy and discover a little bit more about what we're all about, our ethos and the quality of the company, which is in my opinion second to none, then on Sunday night, Stephen will be hosting a Discover Synergy talk. You'll also be mentioning and talking about Synergy from a business perspective, so possibly that might interest you too. And then next week, we've got a few more webinars. We've got a webinar on looking at chronic pain and exhaustion. We're looking at blood pressure, hormones, and also looking at how to improve athletic performance and endurance. So if those interest you, or maybe you know somebody that could be interested, please share this information, share the link to the Foundations for Elite Health website, and we'll get them on board to have a little listen to that. Thank you so much for listening to me. I really appreciate your time, and I will hopefully speak to you very soon in the future. Take care, folks. Bye.